Imagine watching everything you spent your entire life building crashing by 99% and coming back from that and turning your company into a multi-billion-dollar giant. That's exactly what Michael Saylor did, from nearly losing it all to becoming the king of corporate Bitcoin. Saylor's journey is nothing short of legendary. Yes, true story. A Florida man read the Bitcoin standard and bought 4% of the total supply while Wall Street was still sleeping. Oh yeah, and he just bought another $2 billion. This week, Giga Chad wasn't lying when he said we'll sell 0.2% of Bitcoin in a month. We'd probably buy 5 to 10x that much in the same month. Today, we're diving into one of the greatest comeback stories in all of business, all of Wall Street history. A Michael Saylor and strategy turned a catastrophic fall into a revolutionary rise, all thanks to magic internet money, Bitcoin. And this isn't just any comeback, it's a total reinvention of corporate finance through a financial strategy so powerful, it's changing the game for everyone on the planet. He set off a chain reaction. We did the research, and what Saylor has pulled off has never been done before. We got a massive comeback story, the greatest comeback story in Wall Street history to get to. Start.
The benefit to being able to fund with Bitcoin is we have the option to never sell a share of stock again, and that really rips the faces off of the shorts. But I think that if you can borrow money at 3% and you can buy something that gives you 11.5%, and if an $80 billion public company says they will handle the volatility and they will absorb the risk, why wouldn't you?
And obviously, as you said before, you've always said never sell your Bitcoin. You floated the idea in your earnings call, said, inoculate the market to it, which I think is just an evolution, in my opinion, right?
If the market thought we would never sell it, the credit rating agencies would say, well, then I guess it's not an asset. And there's $20 to $100 billion liquidity in the Bitcoin market that is not correlated to our equity or to our credit. If we were to say we're never going to take advantage of that liquidity and we're never going to use that asset, then we're impairing the asset, which 98% of the company is built on. It's pretty important for us to send the signal that if we need to, we can. The truth is, we might sell 20 basis points of Bitcoin, like 0.2% of Bitcoin in a month. We'd probably buy 5x or 10x that much in the same month. But if you sell $100 million of Bitcoin in the same month that you buy $1 billion or $2 billion of Bitcoin, we're still net buyers of Bitcoin. We're still net holders of Bitcoin. But the benefit to being able to fund with Bitcoin is we have the option to never sell a share of stock again, and that really rips the faces off of the shorts. And then we also have the option to capture the tax credit, because we have billions of dollars of tax credits that if we were to simply sell the high basis Bitcoin, we would capture the tax benefit and we could fund the dividend. And then with STRC, we're selling so much STRC that we'll buy back 10 Bitcoin for every 1 Bitcoin we sell. And if you can do that, I would recommend you do it too. It's not a bad business.
It's not selling Bitcoin.
It's not reducing your Bitcoin.
Ripping the faces off shorts is our kind of party, baby. It didn't used to be that way for MicroStrategy, though. 20 years ago, MicroStrategy was on the verge of collapse. A massive accounting scandal during the dot-com bubble wiped out 99% of the company's value. Imagine being in Michael Saylor's shoes. You've built this massive company, you're on Wall Street, and in what feels like an instant, it's gone. The stock tanked from nearly $3,000 a share to under $10. Most CEOs would have quit, stepped down, or sold out, but not Michael Saylor. Fast forward to today, and MicroStrategy is one of the biggest players in all of Bitcoin, holding more Bitcoin than any other company on the planet. Now, outstacking iBit again, MicroStrategy's stock has rebounded dramatically since 2020, and largely thanks to one monumental decision. Saylor bet the farm on Bitcoin. Let's roll back to the early 2000s. MicroStrategy had just gone public and was flying high as a leader in business intelligence software, but then the crash hit. They lost almost everything, with the stock plunging 99%, totally brutal, How do you come back from that? Saylor didn't quit. Instead, he spent the next 2 decades keeping MicroStrategy alive, though the company's future was always in doubt.
When I discovered Bitcoin, or when I first bought Bitcoin, I was ready to retire. I thought I had served more than 30 years as a public company CEO. I thought, I have nothing left to prove in the world. There's not much for me to do. I'll just go ahead and retire and gracefully disappear from history. And Bitcoin plopped itself into my life and first teased me and then seduced me. And then it dragged me onto that stage today. Right? And so I was dragged onto a world stage, and I found myself now, instead of quietly retiring, I was now drawn into a role of advocacy, such that I would get on a plane and fly to Sao Paulo, or fly to Uruguay, or fly to Prague, and obsess over things that I never need to obsess over, and go back on CNBC or go on Fox, go on television, and or sit down and record 1,000 hours of podcast. And these are all things that I discovered late in life. I would say I'm a late bloomer, right? Like I'm much older than the average Bitcoiner, right? And so it's like, how did this all happen? And I think it's Bitcoin inspired me, maybe inspired me, catalyzed me. So it changed how I spend my time. It changed my intellectual interest. It changed our corporate strategy, and it gave me a mission, and I felt compelled to do it, right? Bitcoin serves us all up a mission if we listen carefully to what it has to tell us.
Fast forward to 2020, the world is in utter chaos. We were there, we remember, and the central banks printing trillions of dollars. Saylor, who once dismissed Bitcoin, now saw it as the answer to a much bigger problem. Fiat money was being devalued at a record pace. So, in August 2020, Saylor pulled the trigger, and MicroStrategy became the first public company to adopt Bitcoin as its primary treasury asset.
Joining me now, MicroStrategy's Executive Chairman, Michael Saylor. Michael, I got to give you props, my man. So August 10th, 2020, MicroStrategy adopts its Bitcoin strategy. The experts called you a fool. Thus far, you're crushing everything. I mean, I'm looking at the list. Even Bitcoin you're crushing, but some of these other known, the S&P you're destroying. Google, Microsoft, Apple, you're beating them all by easily. Oracle. So take us back. Take us back to when you made this decision. You knew you would be ridiculed. Why did you do it?
Thanks, Charles, for having me. Most corporations are being torn apart by these twin forces of inflation from the government and then technology-driven deflation. So if you're a Main Street company, you're forced to fight for your survival with one hand tied behind your back. If you're going to keep up with the Magnificent Seven, you're going to have to grow your revenues and cash flows 20% a year or faster ad infinitum. So there's 7 companies that generate all the shareholder returns. There's 7,000 companies can't keep up. What we did in August of 2020 was recognize that there's no way we're going to outgrow Google and Microsoft and Apple Computer as a mid-sized software company. So we started looking to do an acquisition of a high-growth digital monopoly of our own. And we realized that Bitcoin is like a high-tech dominant digital network growing at 40 or 50% a year. And so we bought it. It's kept growing 40 or 50% a year. And now we're using our balance sheet to grow the company as well as our P&L.
Let's talk about the business side of it, the AI side of it. It's all the rage, obviously. What is MicroStrategy doing with respect to artificial intelligence?
We're the first BI company to incorporate artificial intelligence into our product. And so we're feeding it to our customers. They love it. It allows them to build applications faster, and it gives them answers faster. And AI is both making our product better, but it's also accelerating a conversion from on-premises to the cloud. So we see it as a great growth driver for the business.
Michael, you tweeted a very compelling tweet on November 4th about Bitcoin offering corporations an innovative strategy to preserve the capital, sort of what you just talked about. But what I thought was even more compelling is you said to escape the destructive cycle of expensive acquisitions, buybacks, dividends, and debt. Those are all the traditional ways companies are told they can reward shareholders. You're saying skip all of that and go straight to Bitcoin.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, decapitalizing the company by giving the capital back in a buyback or dividending it out and paying the tax on the dividend or engaging in dilutive acquisitions or pursuing breakneck growth initiatives that may or may not work. All of these things are part of the conventional corporate finance playbook, but they don't work. 99% of the companies are failing using that, and they do it because if they just hold their capital in government securities, they generate 3% after tax, right, and the cost of capital is 12 to 15%. So Bitcoin is the solution because you can buy Bitcoin right at 20 to 40% tax-deferred appreciation. You can beat the cost of capital, and pretty soon you're firing on all cylinders because your balance sheet is generating investor returns as well as your P&L.
Before I let you go, Bitcoin on a tear right now. What do you think, over the next year, what could be some of the drivers that take it higher?
Look, the supply and demand are in balance right now, but after the halving in April, the supply gets cut in half, and after the set of spot ETFs come online, the demand's got at least double. So the only thing that's going to adjust there is the price in order to get the market to clear. And so I think you watch the spot ETFs and you watch for the halving, and the next 12 months are pretty auspicious for the asset class.
Yeah, I'm waiting. Michael, great stuff, and again, congratulations. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles.
Saylor wasn't just dipping his toe into Bitcoin. He went all in. The company borrowed money, raised funds, and poured everything into accumulating Bitcoin, and it paid off. MicroStrategy now holds over 843,738 Bitcoin, valued at over $65 billion. That's over 4% of Bitcoin's entire supply. And the stock? MicroStrategy stock is up hundreds of percent since the Bitcoin pivot, making it one of the most traded stocks on the planet. And major players are beginning to ape back in. But this isn't just luck or timing. It's pure strategy. Michael Saylor has turned MicroStrategy into a volatility product, multiplying Bitcoin's gains thanks to the leverage he's built into the system. Now let's put this into perspective. No company has made a comeback quite like MicroStrategy. We hear stories of great turnarounds in business like Apple's revival after they brought back Steve Jobs, or Tesla surviving the brink of bankruptcy. But here's what makes Michael Saylor's story stand out above the rest. In the early 2000s, when MicroStrategy lost over 99% of its value, the situation looked hopeless. The stock dropped from nearly $3,000 to less than $10. Companies don't typically survive that kind of collapse, needless to say. Most would have gone bankrupt, been taken over, faded into obscurity. Think about it, recovering from a near-total wipeout? Totally unheard of. Apple, for example, was in trouble in the late 90s, but its stock hadn't crashed 99%. Steve Jobs returned, turned the company around with innovation and the launch of the iPod, the iPhone, all those incredible products. But Apple still had its core business and resources intact. Then you have Tesla, which was on the verge of bankruptcy in 2008, but again, never lost 99% of its stock value. Tesla's comeback was driven by visionary leadership, innovation, electric vehicles, but it wasn't a complete financial collapse followed by a market-defining pivot like MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor. In MicroStrategy's case, the company wasn't saved by a new product or technological breakthrough. It was a strategic financial move that changed everything. Michael Saylor didn't just play defense to survive. He went on the offensive. His decision to pivot the company's entire treasury strategy into Bitcoin was bold, unprecedented, and let's be honest, incredibly risky. You gotta risk it to get the biscuit, though. And here's what's wild. Saylor turned that risk into a historic financial recovery by betting on Bitcoin, MicroStrategy went from near bankruptcy to becoming one of the most talked about companies in all of corporate finance. No other company has made a comeback on this scale, especially after losing almost everything. When you look at the numbers today, it's staggering. Strategy stock has multiplied several times over since the Bitcoin pivot, outperforming all major indices and even other tech giants like Amazon, Microsoft. During the same period, the company's market cap is soaring, and its strategic vision for the future with Bitcoin puts it in a league of its own.
One observation. I'm unique in a couple of ways. One, I'm the longest lasting CEO of a publicly traded enterprise software company. I lived to see 99% of my peers quit or lose their job. But 99% mortality rate amongst my competitors. They all sold out over the course of 20 years. That's one interesting thing. The second thing is we did implement a capital structure so that the founders could pursue the mission of the business without volatility impacting it. And third, I'm not proud of this, but I'm the only public company officer, maybe the only public company CEO in the history of the world that actually lived to see his stock decline in value by 99.8%. My stock went from $333 a share to 42 cents a share. I kept my job, but if you were on my board of directors, you probably would have fired me if I did not have a controlling stake in the company. I kept my job and I kept the company, and I didn't dissolve it and sell it off to a megacorp to become the 167th division of IBM. And that's why I'm here today. So, people HODL, hold on for dear life or whatever it means, right? I get it, right? It's pretty obvious, but I find it's a joke, when people get on crypto Twitter and they talk about how they might have to sell if Bitcoin trades down 5%, or it's like, you guys haven't lived through anything, right? I mean, any real entrepreneur.
This isn't just another corporate turnaround. It's the greatest comeback in modern business, financial, Wall Street history. And no one else has done it the way Saylor has when you combine the scale of the loss with the audacity of the Bitcoin bet. It's a story unlike anything we've seen before in Wall Street history. Now, while there is no company or business in the modern era, we can look to the past to see a Saylor-like play in the Weimar Republic. But before we break it down along with Saylor and MicroStrategy's $1 trillion endgame, look at our likes!
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Most of you watching right now have your Bitcoin sitting on an exchange. You don't own it. You have an IOU. And when Fink's blockchain goes live and they freeze your account because you reposted the wrong meme, you're going to wish you self-custodied. The Bitcoin way exists because self-custody shouldn't require a computer science degree. White glove onboarding, they walk you through your hardware wallet setup, multi-sig, inheritance planning, the whole stack. So when the system melts down, your stack doesn't melt with it. If you don't hold your keys, you don't hold your Bitcoin. Book your free consultation today. Click that link in the description, scan the QR, head over to the Bitcoin way today, and stop renting your freedom. And here's the dirty secret about every other Bitcoin-backed lender. They're lending your collateral out. They're rehypothecating it. They're playing the same fractional reserve game the banks play with your Bitcoin. And when the music stops, your stack is gone. Ledn doesn't do that. Their custodied loan product means your Bitcoin sits in cold storage. Never lent out, never touched. That's the Satoshi standard. 8 years, $10 billion in origination, 0 customer Bitcoin lost. Lowest rates in the industry, no hidden fees, no fine print, auto top up so you never get liquidated by a wick. 0 prepayment penalties, paid off whenever you want. Don't sell your Bitcoin to buy a house, a car, a business. Borrow against it. Keep your stack. Scan the QR or click the link in the description and head over to Ledn.io today. What Saylor's doing here isn't new in the world of finance. It's called a speculative attack. History has seen this before. We're looking at Hugo Steins, a German entrepreneur during Weimar's hyperinflation. Steins borrowed massive amounts of the falling German mark to buy hard assets, and he became one of the wealthiest men in the country. Michael Saylor is doing the exact same thing. He's borrowing US dollars, which lose value every day, and turning them into Bitcoin, the hardest asset known to man. It's just so simple. But in a world where central banks print trillions, Saylor's bet on Bitcoin is a playbook. Others will try, have, and will have to try to follow. MicroStrategy's bet on Bitcoin is more than just some bold little investment. It changed how corporate finance works. Saylor has pioneered the concept of using Bitcoin as a corporate treasury reserve asset. He's even inspired many other companies to do the same. Now think about this for a second. MicroStrategy owns more Bitcoin than any country on earth, and if Bitcoin keeps rising, MicroStrategy could become the first trillion-dollar company with Bitcoin as its backbone. What's next for Michael Saylor? Well, it looks like his vision doesn't stop at being the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin. He sees strategy becoming a Bitcoin bank, a financial institution built around Bitcoin. This is what STRC is, offering loans, equities, other financial products tied to Bitcoin. STRC is a Bitcoin bond. That's all it is. But as you can see what's happening to the treasury market, it's very appealing now, wouldn't you say? He's even talking about creating a company worth 300 to 400 billion using Bitcoin as collateral. Again, this isn't just a comeback story. This is a revolution in how companies store value, how they leverage Bitcoin, how they insert Bitcoin into financial markets and products. So when we talk about Michael Saylor, we're not just talking about another CEO who made a little investment. We're talking about someone who redefined corporate finance. He took a company that had lost 99% of its value and turned it into a Bitcoin giant.
If we can, give not only equity investors, but also, debt investors, Bitcoin exposure. And when I say debt investors, this is the one thing I don't think anyone understands. MicroStrategy, through these convertible notes, right? Like in a rising rate environment, the 10-year yield went from 1% to 5% from 2021 to today, or 4.5%. MicroStrategy's zero interest rate convertible debt from 2021 to today is up more than 200% from par. So it was issued at a dollar or $100 on the $100 par value. It's now at 300 plus. The convertible, that does not happen in the bond market. That never happens. It's the best performing debt instrument in the world from par. The convertible, zero interest rate convertible note. Why? Because it's Bitcoin. Big. It's a Bitcoin proxy. So the stock, is a big story. Their Bitcoin holdings are a big story. They have 1% of the Bitcoin supply, which is massive. But the convertible note, taking your balance sheet, Bitcoinizing the balance sheet, not only Bitcoinizing, because Bitcoin's notoriously volatile, right? But also adding a sprinkle of liabilities to your asset liability balance sheet. So you get levered Bitcoin, right? And then that volatility, that mark-to-market volatility of your shares, of your common stock, of your balance sheet is not a weakness. That's a strength. And people don't understand why that's a strength, right? Like Bitcoin's so volatile. Saylor, you're crazy. MicroStrategy's even more volatile. Saylor, you're a madman. That's the entire reason they can borrow at zero. Yeah. Because the bond math of a convertible note, they're not like, the narrative is good that, these bond investors, they love Bitcoin or, they, like myself or like others, they love listening to Saylor on a podcast and he's, that's not what it is. Even though that might be a good story to tell. They're just looking at similar to how options trader would look at if you go on say Robinhood and you're looking at the value of calls and puts out of the money, stocks at 10, a call for 15 or a put at 5, the value of that for a stock that doesn't move at all and is just flat and dead, those options are worth nothing. But if you crank the volatility from 20% annualized to 100% annualized for that stock that's trading at $10, the $15 calls and $5 puts are really, really valuable. So MicroStrategy can borrow at zero because they have a balance sheet that's Bitcoinized, and not only 100% Bitcoinized, 120% Bitcoinized. And so this is the crack in the matrix. And this is how, if you could, they're borrowing at 50 basis points with a 10-year at 5%. In theory, if the cost of capital was 1% with a weaker currency, what could you borrow at?
When the cage closes and the grid goes down and look around, it's not a question of like if anymore. How are you broadcasting your transactions? How are you reaching the network? SAT123 is the answer. Satellite Bitcoin gear, off-grid kits, sovereign communications, the hardware that keeps you connected to the network when the network they control goes down. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Use code SIMPLY to get you 15% off at the checkout at SAT123. Link in the description. Scan the QR. Don't be the guy who self-custodies and can't transact. Hey, if you enjoyed the breakdown of Saylor's legendary comeback, don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a pamp. Help spread the sound money gospel. And hit the notification bell to get all the latest Simply Bitcoin content. And we will be your guide through the peaceful revolution. Oh, and one last thing. We've been building something in the background. Top secret. Something we've been working on for months. It's going to change what this channel does for you, what we deliver, and how you survive what's coming. I can't tell you what it is yet. Not today, but I can tell you this. If you ain't first, you're last. Scan the QR code on the screen. Do it. Click the link in the description. Sign up to the early list. Be the first to know what Simply Bitcoin has been building and what's about to drop. You don't want to find out about this from someone else? Bitcoin doesn't give a but you should. And let us know in the comments, do you think Saylor's Bitcoin strategy will lead them to $1 trillion valuation? Is Michael Saylor the John Elway of finance? If it's true, Elway was like fine wine. He got pummeled in 3 Super Bowls before an epic finish. If history rhymes, Saylor could be well on his way toward back-to-back Super Bowls before riding off into the sunset. If you ain't bullish, you're foolish. Click here to keep this party going, and I'll catch you next time. Love you guys. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.